Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored that you are part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Thank you for helping us spread the word about just how valuable it is to spend time reading with your kids. We have a wonderful guest today that's going to help us and help us help our kids discover their own song. We'll be interviewing Dennis Matthew, the author of Bello the Cello. While Dennis is tuning up the cello for his appearance, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by an incredibly fun read out loud picture book, The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tarantacranchosaurus, written by Stephen Joseph and playfully illustrated by Andy Case. We've said it before, reading with your kids is oftentimes about reading out loud with your kids. And what would make for a better read out loud book than a book that has 6 cranky relatives, 3 mean dinosaurs, and 1 very cranky Tarantacranchosaurus? The Last Surviving Dinosaur tells the tale of how the dinosaurs became extinct, and it's not the life-ending meteor shower the paleontologists often cite. The Tarantacranchosaurus is so cranky that she makes all the other bigger and meaner dinosaurs disappear. That is, until she comes across the only dinosaur who is immune to her incessant complaining, the Tarantacranchosaurus. These 2 dinosaurs evolved into humans, and that's where cranky people come from. This really is a wonderful book that your kids are going to love, and you're going to have a lot of fun too. Just imagine how much fun your kids are going to have just listening to you try to pronounce the Tarantacranchosaurus. The Last Surviving Dinosaur reminds readers to be mindful of when and how often they complain. Now, that's a lesson from which all readers, young and old, can benefit. The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tarantacranchosaurus by Stephen Joseph, is available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other sites where books are sold. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by our friends at Familius Publishing. And when I mean friends, I absolutely mean the folks at Familius. They are our friends. They've been so helpful to the show. We had a chance last year to speak to Diane London. She is the author of a book that was just released, a beautiful photo book called Dogs vs. Ice Cream. You absolutely should check out in our archives that conversation with Diane, and also check out Dogs vs. Ice Cream. It's a really, really cool book. And Familius, they're really cool because they publish books and other content to help families be happy. We believe that family is a fundamental unit of society and that happy families are the foundation of a happy life. We recognize that every family looks different, and we passionately believe in helping all families find greater joy. To that end, we publish books for children and adults that invite families to live the Familius 9 habits of happy family life. Love together, play together, learn together, work together, talk together, heal together, read together, eat together, and laugh together. And we think you should check out their website together. It's Familius.com, Familius, Familius.com. And we also think you should check out their Instagram together, at Familius Talk. That way you can learn more about their titles and stay up to date on the latest releases from our buddies at Familius Publishing. And we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is also brought to you by the Queen Vernita Visitor Series by author Dr. Don Menge. This really is a fun and educational series of 9 books that your families will love. You're all going to love following the Queen and her 12 subjects as they explore a new and exotic region every new year. The Queen's subjects teach her all about the wonders of the world: stalactites, stalagmites, sharks, seahorses, glaciers, volcanoes, and so much more. The Queen and her subjects are also going to help you and your kids learn about the people in your lives. Dr. Don Menge is a veteran special needs teacher, and she thinks it's important for every child and every adult to understand that people with challenges such as Rett syndrome, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, deafness, visual impairments, autism, these folks facing these challenges are people, and they can be wonderful friends. And the Queen Visitor Series is a wonderful introduction and to that message for our kids, to open up their hearts, to be friends with everyone. Pam Schneider has provided bright, colorful, and whimsical illustrations that beautifully complement the text. The Queen Venita Visitor Series will make a great addition to any classroom or family library. Check it out today, the Queen Venita Visitor Series. Joining us on the line right now from not too far from our beautiful Reading with Your Kids studios here in Boston, Massachusetts. Joining us from the North Shore of Massachusetts. He is the author of a great new picture book called Bello the Cello. Please welcome to the show, Dennis Matthew. Dennis, how are you?
Hey, doing great. Thank you so much for calling me. I appreciate it.
We're really happy that you're here, and I'm really excited to learn all about Bello the Cello. Tell us about the story, please.
So Bello the Cello is a picture book, like you said, for grades pre-K through second. It's the story of a young cello overcoming his fears about the first day of school and discovering his own song.
Certainly a universal kind of fear. I think that every kid going into school that first day is kind of intimidated.
Yep. Absolutely. And to write this book, I kind of reflected back on my first day of school back in kindergarten. And I remember it being so traumatic because I didn't want to be separated from my parents, who I was used to living with for 4 or 5 years. And now all of a sudden I was about to go through this transitional phase. My dad was dropping me off at school. I was going to spend a whole day without my dad or mom, getting used to all these new faces, and there was a lot of uncertainty that I had to tackle through. So writing this book, I tapped back into those young memories of young Dennis, and being an educator myself, now being in the schools for about 12 years as a speech pathologist, I run into these children that have a hard time transitioning from their home life into their school life. So this book is sort of my letter to them, tapping into my own memories, speaking to them to empower them to overcome their fears about transitioning into a new school environment.
Well, I have to tell you, first off, you're really lucky that you can remember that first day of school. Of course, for me, it was about 100 years ago, and I kind of remember the dinosaurs being in the way of the building when I was trying to walk in. But
That's funny.
It is this as you were saying, it is this feeling that it is such a huge change when we think about it, and especially as you kind of broke it down for us. You know, here we are, and now whether it's the first day of kindergarten or the first day of preschool, or kids,
Yep.
especially nowadays, where, and again, I was joking, just kind of about going to school 100 years ago. But, when I was younger, it was much more normal for us to go out and play,
Yep.
To leave the house and walk down to the playground at 4 years old. I know a young parent out there right now is horrified at the idea that their 4-year-old might walk, a block down the street to go to the playground by themselves. But it really happened. And it doesn't happen these days. So, yeah, the transition is much more stark. You're going from being with these 1 or 2 or 3 people that you've loved forever, you've known your entire life, and now you're not going to be with them, and you're going to be with all of these strangers.
Yep. And so, yeah, that's what Bello goes through on his first day of school. Luckily for him, though, he has a very nurturing environment that he walks into. When you read the book, you will meet Miss Melody, the classroom teacher, who's very inviting, nurturing, empowering. So thankfully, when you get to the end of the book, you realize Bello, though in a new environment, because of his nurturing, positive, encouraging environment, because of his new community, he is able to discover his own song. It takes time. But at his own pace, he is able to discover his own song. So this book, while it is about discovering you, it is also about community. that we arrive at ourselves, that we arrive at our gifts, not just by ourselves, not just by journeying by ourselves through life, but it's about also getting linked up with the positive influences in our community. So this book is also about the power of community and the power of belonging, just like Bello belonged to a wonderful classroom. So, yeah.
Talk a little bit about that phrase, and I really love it, discovering your own song. Talk a little bit about what that means to you.
So, for me, you know, I'll say, so my first day of school was tough. Took a while for me to overcome that, but I surely did. And then as I just turned 37 yesterday, as a matter of fact. So reflecting back on my 37 years of existence, I have noticed a pattern in my life that I was late to arrive at things, that I was a late bloomer, so to speak. And in my younger days, I mean, I realized this quickly, you know, a few years of schooling, first grade, second grade, third grade, I realized that when it came to academics, when it came to making friends, when it came to athletics and sports, I was a bit behind than my peers in my classroom. But nonetheless, I did, at my own pace, arrive at my own milestones, took my time, but discovered where I could contribute on the playground, discovered where I was good academically. So now being an educator, that's my message to my students, that you will arrive at your gifts, at whatever you're good at your life's purpose. Even though if it's done at your own pace, that's okay. You will find the rhythm to your own life as time moves on. And that's what I mean by discovering your own song, whether that's being good at sports, or whether that's being good at writing a story, playing a musical instrument. Because children, you know, from the first day of school, they are on this quest to discover themselves. And from the day you walk into that classroom, children start comparing themselves to their peers. Well, so-and-so is good at X, Y, and Z. Joe over here is good at whatever. But I haven't found my gifting. And so my message in the book is, take your time, don't rush yourself, you know, study your environment, study yourself, become a student of the process, take your time to arrive at, quote unquote, your own song. So, that's what I mean by discovering your own song. And for Bello, in the book, you will find that his song was different from that of his peers, but he had a purpose and a place to fit into his environment. It took him some time to discover it, but surely he does get to that place.
It's interesting that your character is a cello. What was the inspiration for that?
So I want to say about 10, 12 years ago, I was part of a program with my church group where a bunch of us would get together, bring our music instruments in whatever way we could contribute, drums, guitars, keyboards, whatever. We would come together and just play music and just enjoy music on a weekly at a weekly interval, so to speak. And so I knew what to expect walking into those environments. Somebody would always bring a keyboard, someone would always bring a guitar, someone might bring a tambourine or whatever, and we would just jam out, just enjoy each other and the music. But this one particular time, a young lady brought a cello, and not the most popular instrument, at a concert or at a musical experience. The cello is not a very common instrument. Yet, when this young lady brought this cello to this particular church gathering, the sound that the cello produced had a very magical effect on the room. It had a very unique sound. I noticed that it stood out, even though it wasn't the most, attention-grabbing instrument. Every time the cello played, there was an effect on the room. And my mind quickly went to my own personal experiences and what children go through during their school experiences. And the message was, man, there are people in the room that don't necessarily grab your attention the minute you walk in, but, you know, in due time, there are people in the room that shine in their own little ways that have a positive effect, you know, in the classroom, in our communities. And so as an educator, anytime I walk into a classroom, I look for those people. I look for those students that don't necessarily are in the star of the show, so to speak, but if you pay close attention to their stories, they are contributing to the collective experience of our communities. And so I drew a parallel between the cello that was present in the room that particular night and the student in our classroom, or the students in our classrooms that have their own little unique giftings and contributions to make to our communities. And so that's where the whole idea of Bello the Cello came, the idea for this book. And so then, you know, once I identified, you know what, I'm going to write a picture book about a young cello, drawing parallels between that young cello and the students in our classroom these days. Then it was just a matter of, you know, coming up with a name for this young cello that rhymed. So Bello sounded great. It had, you know, sounded easy to my ears, so to speak. And so I just, you know, coined the little phrase Bello the Cello, and then the writing process started from that point on.
What's been the reaction to folks that have experienced Bello the Cello, either kids that have read it or parents and families that have read it together?
I want to say they're so fond of the character. Mm-hmm. Bello, I mean, if you look at the cover page, he looks like your everyday underdog. He does not look like the guy or the gal that's going to save the day. You know, when you look at the cover page, you feel for him. You feel empathetic. Your heart goes out to this little guy that's on the cover of my book. And it's inviting. That invites people to open the book and read the story of Bello the Cello. And by the end, they're captivated by him. You know, he's this little character that does not seem to command a lot of attention. But wow, what a difference he makes in the room, in his community, so to speak. So yeah, the overall takeaway that people have is they walk away very fond of Bello.
That's wonderful. Tell us a little bit, because I know a lot of listeners out there, they're involved in education and that their kids are going to schools, but they're not involved in the day-to-day kind of ways that you are. Talk to us a little bit about education and the kind of the state of education that you see and how things have changed and how best for parents to partner with teachers and administrators and therapists like yourself to make their kids' learning experience the very best it can be.
I would say more than ever before, I think it's important to be in tune as educators, parents, paraprofessionals, therapists, what have you. I think it's more important than ever before to be in tune with the emotional well-being of our students, taking care of who they are when it comes down to their identity and how they experience themselves, like making sure that they are emotionally doing well and that the expectations that we place on them from an education standpoint is not overwhelming for them. I think it's important to make expectations meet their developmental milestones, so to speak, at a steady pace. We got to make sure that, you know, where children are at their emotional, where children are developmentally, emotionally, I think that needs to match up with the expectations that we place on them from an academic standpoint.
Now, I asked this of an author who is a former teacher, and she really loved the chance to answer the question. Now, like I said, she was a former teacher, so it might be more difficult for you as an active educator in a system right now. But if you had a magic wand that you could wave to make the education system as perfect as it could be, what would you do?
Wow. I would wave that wand and give our teachers more rest time, more time for self-reflection, And I would do the same for our students too, because I think the education system right now seems to be, from my personal opinion, a little bit too fast-paced.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of learning happens in self-reflection. And I think we need to teach our children how to reflect on their learning experiences, because I think that's where they make those connections, those learning connections. And so I would wave that one, give our teachers more time to self-reflect, give them downtime during the educational day, and which I hope would then brush up on our students to slow down and self-reflect as well.
Well, she's not here right now, but I have a feeling that my wife, who's been a teacher for over 30 years, would stand up and give you a rousing round of applause for that suggestion.
Thank you so much.
But I think it is true, and it's interesting, you know, as you were talking about being attentive to our kids' emotional well-being and their emotional development. You know, the first thing that came into my mind was to be kind of flippant and make a joke about, you know, back when I was a kid, that wasn't a concern. It didn't seem to be a concern at all.
Right.
And yeah, and I think it's accurate. And I'm happy that we're talking about that now and working with our kids. Not only is it going to help our kids to become healthier and hopefully safer, because we're going to, you know,
right,
identify kids who need help and get them the help they need. But as I've been doing this podcast, I've done a number of different podcasts, and when I've had the chance to talk to leaders in business, one of the things they've always said is, you know, the thing that they're looking for most of all in an employee is somebody who can work well as a teammate. You know, yeah, it's great if you have some skills. Yeah, it's great if you have a degree in this or that. But most of all, they need to know that they can bring you onto the team, that you're going to be able to get along with others, you're going to play nicely with others. And that really surprised me, coming from these leaders of Fortune 500 companies.
Right. Because I think at the end of the day, we are so I think back I think back when, you know, I went to school, which is only like 20-something years ago. I think we were not as interconnected as we are now. Mm-hmm. I think we're definitely more a global community now, and I think the power of community, the importance of being able to play well in the sandbox, so to speak, I think that's more powerful now than ever before. So I think that's why you find bosses that'll say, you know, more than the skill set that they bring to the table, we're looking for somebody that's teachable. Because we can, you know, if someone is teachable and they are a good team player in this day and age where it's all about who are you running with, what pack are you running with, and where the sense of community has a lot more, has a higher premium set on it. So if someone can come and belong, if they can find a way to fit in, if they're adaptable, if they're flexible, if they're teachable, then we can teach them the skills that they need to function in this company, so to speak. As opposed to if they purely just bring a skill set, but they don't know how to play well. In this day and age, it's hard to arrive at a destination. Does that make sense? Like as a company, so. And I think back in the day, you could survive with an X number of skills. If you were good at what you did, you could kind of sit in your old cubicle or pop open your laptop and just go to work. But I think now we're becoming more, what you do affects what I do, and so we've got to learn to coexist. I mean, that's the kind of world we are in right now.
And it just makes for happier people. Everyone, people get along.
Absolutely. And coming back to the book, that's a lot of children have pointed out. While the focus is on Bello, a lot of young children have pointed out that the experience for Bello of arriving at his own song was made a pleasant journey because of who his peers were in the classroom. Because when you read the book, you find the little tambourine that's excited about what he does. You find the flute that's excited about his song. You find a guitar. You find a drum. And they all have a place to shine. But at the same time, students who have read the book have pointed out, none of these instruments made Bello feel bad about his journey. Mm-hmm. And that really was important to me because I think when we belong to these little communities in the classroom as teachers, as paraprofessionals, as students who, know what they bring to the table, I think it's important for us to take care of the ones who are the late bloomers, letting them know it's okay to take your time to arrive at your song. You can still belong. Mm-hmm. So I think that's also the message of Bello the Cello. Miss Melody and the other instruments in the classroom, without saying it, they are letting Bello know it's okay that you don't know your song right now, but you can still belong. Mm-hmm. Just because you don't know who you are in this moment in time, that doesn't exclude you from belonging. And I think that's a powerful message to give to our children that, some people realize their, how they can contribute at a much later time, and that's okay. There will be a day and a time where they also have something to say. But meanwhile, go ahead and still belong. Belong to our pack. Let's run together. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So,
and I love that you use the image of an instrument and all these different instruments because we all know, we all have our favorite instruments. I was a percussionist growing up. But one of the things that most kids understand is, as much as I love that guitar, as much as I love those drums, boy, they sound better when they're playing in concert with other instruments.
That's right. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can, again, goes back to that sense of you can either do life in isolation where you have a certain skill set and you can do your own thing, or in the day and age we live now where you are more powerful when you belong to something bigger than you. You can bring your skill set, join a community that has a collection of skill sets, and we can make something beautiful together. So you're absolutely right. That is the message that this book is about. Like Bello, in concert with his peers, he's able to discover his song.
Yeah. And I'm talking about skill sets. I have to tip my hat off to you as a speech professional, as a
pathologist.
Pathologist. I had an incredible speech impediment when I entered school. And it was thanks to a very patient speech, I don't know if he was a speech therapist or speech pathologist, but he really helped me through and got to the point where this kid who couldn't really say a word never shuts up these days. So I have to give my hat, thank him and give my hat off, take my hat off to all you therapists and pathologists.
So I think your life story is a great parallel to Bello's story in the book. Just like you said, I mean, now you're heading up a podcast and talking about all these books and educators out there, but it took you a while to discover your song too. So I think your life story is a great parallel to the story that Bello the Cello is all about. Yeah, I completely agree.
And would you also, this just occurred to me as you're talking about that, because my song has kind of changed, and my wife often makes fun of me because of all the different jobs or all the different songs that have come into my life. It's, I guess it's important for us to let our kids know, too, that we can change our songs as we grow and meet new people and have new experiences.
Yeah, so I think evolving. So when you're a part of a community, right, I think things stay organic and fluid. And I think, again, speaking of the times that we live in, the more fluid and open you are to organically evolving, building on your previous skill sets as you belong to a community, that speaks to maturity and growth and our value to the communities that we belong in. The more stagnant and set we are in our ways, we then become of less use to the communities that we belong in. So, yeah, I would 100% agree with you. I think being able to evolve as time moves on is very important and a powerful skill to have in this day and age. And I would agree. I would also say, just like you were saying, I've had to, over the last 37 years, evolve as I've grown older, just trying to, do what needs to be done in whatever, time I'm in. Just like right now, I mean, I've been a speech therapist for 12 years. I felt like I had a story to write, and, I've evolved from just being a speech therapist to now becoming a new author. Bello the Cello, thankfully, is doing very well. I'm now getting ready to publish my second book, and so there are more books in the works. So that also speaks to not just being stagnant in one chapter of your life and being open to the second, the third, and the fourth, and the fifth chapters of your life story being written, being open to those new possibilities.
Absolutely. Well, we want folks to be open to finding out more about Bello the Cello and more about Dennis Matthews. So tell folks where they can connect with you online.
So they can definitely go to my website, booksbydennis.com. They can find Bello the Cello on Amazon. I am on Twitter. My handle is @storiesbydennis. I'm on Instagram. Handle is @booksbydennis. I'm on Facebook as well, Books by Dennis M. So I'm online and would be happy to connect with new friends to share my books with them.
That is fantastic. Well, we're going to, you can find out about the new book, the new chapter in Dennis's life by going to his website. And we're just going to tease it like that because I'd really like to have Dennis back on to talk about that new book when it's available. Until then, we want you to check out Bello the Cello by our guest, Dennis Matthews. Dennis, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Jed. It was a great pleasure and an honor, and thank you to your listeners as well. Thank you so much.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be our friend Leslie Wall. She'll be here to tell us some great book suggestions that we might want to read with our tweens and our teens. That is the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. If you are the author of a great children's book, we would love for you to be a guest on the show. Being a guest gives you the opportunity to tell thousands and thousands of people about your great children's book. It's fun. It's easy. And all you need to do is to go to our website, Reading with Your Kids, click on the contact button, let us know about your great book. We will let you know the next easy steps. We want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. We want to thank Dennis Matthews for helping us discover our own song. Be sure to check out Bello the Cello. We also want to thank Stephen Joseph for sponsoring the show, the author of The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tarantacranchosaurus. We want to thank Dr. Dawn Minch. Check out her Queen Vernita Visitor Series. And, of course, we want to thank our friends at Familius Publishing. Our friends at Familius Publishing, so many wonderful books. We've previewed so many books here on the show. The Big Book of Games by Brad Berger. The Little Book of Foster Care Wisdom by Dr. John DeGarmo. So many more. Check them out at Familius Talk on Instagram and Familius.com. I also want to thank my amazing producer, Fatima Khan. Fatima, thank you so much for all that you do. Be sure to check out Fatima's blog at our website, readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all of the support she gives me. And, of course, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.